Chapter 1, Chapter 1. Honestly, I thought my cheat was something as lame as having native Japanese downloaded into my brain after getting kidnapped into another world. I mean, really being dropped into the small Japanese city of Kuo was enough of a brick to the face, plus the whole language download to prove that this was almost certainly the DXD universe. But when I shook the hand of the woman who gave me the information of where I was, when she gave me a stupid business card for her husband's moving company that he worked for, my mind was utterly blown by the massive deluge of information that filled me, making me hurriedly drop her hand and stagger away from the woman, with said Japanese woman realizing my excuses that I got off a train drunk and had no idea where I was certainly a lie, and I was definitely tweaker or something. "Excuse me, sir, but I have things to do," the woman said, bowing before she beat a quick retreat as I leaned against a telephone pole and slid down it with my mind still drowning in information overload. I knew the location of every single cell in the woman's body. I knew she had not been drinking enough water, what with the large amount of sugary fluids in her stomach. I fucking knew the woman had burgeoning breast cancer, for God's sake. I groaned loudly as I finally managed to mentally push down the full map of the woman's body while I massaged my head at the information overload. Several minutes later, I realized something though. My body had changed from my past mid-20s bland American form, as I had somehow in my throes of mental anguish copied over some of the DNA of the woman, and if anything, I felt that I took on a bit of the world's airbrushed appearance. "Wait, how the fuck can I feel how I look?" I muttered in complete confusion, until it hit me as my consciousness seemed to enter my body, and I, much slower than the total download previously, began to scan my body from the tips of my toes and slowly worked my way up the complicated parts of my body, and every bit of my body was within my preview like a god overlooking his subjects. I could change and adapt my body however I desired. Folding out my hand in my lap, I ever so slightly made my fingernails lengthen by breaking down keratin elsewhere, and reinforced the nails until I had a couple inches long small point fingernail that was far thicker than a normal nail. Then, once reinforcing it to my finger, I errantly dragged it down a wooden post nearby when no one seemed to be looking at me oddly anymore. My reinforced nails easily gouged the wood as I had made the nails literally almost monomolecular thick, as I could easily control the individual amounts of alpha keratin present on the nail in question. "Alright, Jake. The real question is, what do I do now? Where am I in the DXD timeline? And most importantly, can I set down my pride to be a servant to someone else for damn near ageless immortality, being gifted to you, a robust magic system based on imagination that can catapult my already broken biomanipulation even further, and most importantly for said ability, it will get me close to a waifu that I can easily seduce, that has the very concept of destruction written into her bloodline, that I may be able to copy to myself. Honestly, by saving Rias from her engagement, I can easily see Siskon Surzekas giving me a pass straight to the middle-class devil, and then with the bullshit coming in canon like dealing with a Rouge Cadre fallen angel, I can easily get to high-class devil without waiting years like Issei had to, because he was too obsessed with Rias's boobs to want to make his own peerage and deal with all the paperwork. When I got dumped in DXD, I didn't have any paperwork or anything like that, but I did have a small, metal-locked box dumped onto my lap, and I wasn't able to do anything with it as it was literally welded shut. So, this box was probably a bit of a test to see if I could open it with my powers. I muttered as I picked up said box, and went into one of the nearby alleyways, and when seeing a park on the other side, I walked over there so I didn't seem like a creeper hanging over a locked box in an admittedly clean alleyway. Once I got into the park and saw that with it being on close to noon, no one was even here, as almost everyone was either at work or school. So I happily lifted up my shirt to do some nasty biomanipulation that would undoubtedly scar people for life. In my past life, I actually went to a welding school and knew a bit about dealing with metal, especially clearly welded together, and knew that the metal that bound the metal was far weaker than most metals in general due to the ludicrous temperature it gets to without any real tempering. Once I was damned sure no one was around, I very slowly and carefully walked my hand into something resembling a mix of a hydraulic press, with a sort of arrowhead at the end and a crab's claw, with how the hand-shaped arrow-ended hydraulic press was encased in a thick keratin to keep the bulging muscles from going everywhere. I then braced the box on the concrete ground beneath the chair I was on, and then I activated the reforged muscles within my arm and body as the arrow-like tip of my new hand slowly pressed into the crease of the locked box, and finally, with a loud crashing noise, the box was split in half as the thin solder shattered at the pressure. Once the box shot open, I instantly began to change my body back, and had to suffer the agony and pain of the nerves in the arm being shifted around, as I was so scared of someone hearing and investigating the sound of the metal box screeching across the concrete. But finally, I was able to change my hand and the rest of my body back to normal despite the pain of not taking my time over the course of several minutes. Thankfully, with my thought that most everyone was super busy, I was right, as no one came to see what the noises was all about. So once I got over the pain of turning my hand from a damned hydraulic press, and then back into a normal human hand, I checked out the contents of the case. Well, here was the paperwork I wanted. I muttered with my eyes twitching heavily at the familiar handwriting that faced. Hey other me. I decided, after being the poorest Jake in the multiverse, and being punted into a Warhammer 40k hive city, that I wasn't going to be an immortal troll asshole like my patron Jake was. Anywho, this school transfer papers will get you into Kuo Academy, and should anyone ask where the rest of your paperwork was, just say it was lost with how your immigration papers were burnt alongside a rather convenient government facility somehow collapsing into a sinkhole, and losing its paper, an electronic paper trail for the month's new immigrants. Blinking in confusion, I had to reread what was written, as even I had problems reading my chicken scratch of handwriting before I understood that this alternate Jake of me decided to rob me, and I honestly shuddered at the thought of being dropped in Warhammer, and honestly DXD was just so much better in comparison even with the crazies around. Once I got past my ever so minor identity crisis of infinite Jakes running around the omniverse, isekaiing other Ms, I continued to read the letter. Now, in order for you to actually interact with the world and yes, be entertaining to the other Jakes who may check up on you, you need to join Kuo Academy, and as you almost certainly have found out by now, you have biomanipulation powers. But don't worry, for one, joining Riaz's peerage won't be all that hard with the little knickknack I threw in as a welcoming gift to jumpstart your magical side of your powers. And as further encouragement to play my game, should you and the rest of Riaz's female members of her peerage survive Kokabiel, then I will gift another very nice boost to your powers. Finished up with the letter, I moved aside the satin-like cloth, and beheld a gently glowing with holy silver light 1/2 meter long horn of sorts. What's this horn supposed to be? I muttered as I looked at it with trepidation, as I well recalled the agony of trying to map out a human being earlier. What a godly being thought to be an interesting gift to someone may very well prove to be as lethal as swallowing an enriched piece of uranium, or something for a normal human. Well, if I die, I can always give him a bad review or ask to speak to his manager or something. I muttered vindictively as I prepared my mind for another drowning session of information overloaded agony, when I slowly touched the tip of my finger to the end of the horn. Rather than the full map out of the creature I was scanning being dumped into my head, my consciousness was seemingly ensnared within hands of velvet softness, as small tendrils of knowledge gently entered my mind slowly, and I knew the Jake who sent me this was the one who had set something up to make sure I didn't all but assuredly die of a brain hemorrhage in the information overload of what damned bullshit cheat item he gave me. A true unicorn horn from a high-level cultivation universe, I said in wonder as fragments of the unicorn's memories was transferred to me at behest of both the unicorn and the Jake who saved the unicorn's child at some point, and the horn was his repayment for his actions. Not only was my bones and other like bits enhanced to an insane degree as I copied over the calcium-like structures within the unicorn horn, but my very blood was changed to match the life-bearing fluids within the horn itself, and I could feel my dark blonde hair turning a soft sun-spun golden as the true holy nature of the unicorn imprinted itself upon me. Not only was my body greatly improved, I reacted to the memories within the horn, and held up my hand with a soft glowing spring green, and autumn golden light appearing within it as I received the two primal powers of the unicorn, besides its healing and cursed blood. Undying spring inducement, and eternal autumn. Undying spring was the representative of the boundless vitality within me and would provide an active, powerful healing corona energy around me, while also having a passive aura of contentment that would soothe the holy energies of the unicorn, allowing all that were pure of heart to approach without burning to ashes. The eternal autumn, however, was on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, as it violently ripped out the life force of everyone around the unicorn, besides those that has drunk the blessed unicorn's blood. Finally, the fragmented memories that simply explained the most bare-bones abilities of the unicorn's traits faded from my mind with the glowing essence of the unicorn going inert, before the unicorn horn literally broke apart into dust that blew away in a very opportune gust of wind that smacked me in the face with seemingly a pile of leaves. Deadpanning, I moved aside the cloth that the unicorn horn was on and saw another little note at the bottom of the box. You better appreciate all the help, as the other Jakes don't like the extra bit I gave you, but I say fuck them. The first Jake that married his Jump-chan generic goddess gave the green light, so if you see them, don't worry about them. Despite there being a couple dozen of us, we have never ever killed one another, so just relax, as despite our power we are all rather chill for the most part. Except for that one Jake that got dropped inside Kuroinu. He absolutely hates NTR for good reasons, so make sure to kill or incapacitate Issei before he joins the peerage if you want to waifu Rias and the others. The note ended and I could only hiss as the note burst into flames, and I took from the note that poor Jake probably got cuckolded or something when he turned his back and his waifus got taken by orcs or something. Yep, first thing I am going to do is get to Kuo Academy, get enrolled, find out where Issei lives, and maybe mentally fuck with him to summon his sacred gear before I deal with him. I thought as I took the warning very seriously, and honestly, I didn't give a damn if Issei lived, as I wasn't friends with him. And if he stands in the way of immortality and godhood like the rest of my alternates, I can get therapy for murdering him in cold blood. Chapter 2. Seeing little other choice, I decided to play along with the Rob version's plan of me. Plus, let's be honest, I didn't want to wander the world in the mundane world, when a whole supernatural world was ripe for me to spread my wings and explore. A few minutes later, I followed the map I found by the train station to Kuo Academy, and with how it was in the middle of the day, it wasn't a surprise that the school was just winding down its lessons. Going back to school is going to suck, I muttered before brightening up as I realized that despite Rias and Sona taking over the school so they could attend it, the leaders of the peerage didn't really do attendance themselves for most part, as Sona was too busy cosplaying as the principal in being the student council president, and Rias was probably watching anime or something in the whole school building she had for herself and her peerage. But instead of an open school front like most American schools would, this one had a large gate in front of it. Is there an intercom or something? I muttered as I looked around the gate to hopefully talk to one of the staff members about my enrollment. That will not be necessary. You are Jake Barris, the exchange student from America, correct? A female voice spoke, and from the other side of the gate, a young woman came out beside the right side of the wall. The girl was wearing Kuo's Academy's uniform, consisting of a very short purple and white trim skirt, black midriff cover thing, and a white dress shirt. She had white hair, and her light green eyes were almost grey, which matched her hair, and finally, of course, as was the standard here in DXD, she had a fantastic set of breasts that pushed out her uniform's top. That's correct. Are you the one who is to lead me to the faculty office? I asked, not really recalling her name, as Sona's peerage never really came up in the anime, which is all the real context for the world other than other fanfics I had read in my previous life. I just hope other me was cool enough to deal with that EXE nonsense that I heard about. That is incorrect, the pale beauty said, cutting my thoughts for the future off while she continued. The student council president will be handling your transfer to this school, as the principal is currently busy with other matters, due to you coming so late in the day. Yet more proof of Sona's little power trip while playing as the principal of the school, but not wanting to cause waves. I merely nodded and held up the soft suitcase I had for any schoolwork I needed to skive off of. I got my paperwork with me. Do you need to see it? I offered, and she shook her head. No, your picture, her student ID picture, has already been given to me. And a foreigner wanting to join our great school is easy enough to remember, she said, shrugging, reminding me of how a lot of Japanese people will probably be kind of snooty for me being a big, tall American blonde dude. But here in this almost entirely female school that was converted from an all-girls school, I doubted they would attempt any bullying, as my unicorn enhancements had cleared up my body of all its imperfections, and it was likely I would be put into that whole prince category alongside Kiba of Riaz's peerage. Honestly, I was surprised that this devil in front of me hadn't mentioned the fairly clear supernatural aura I was broadcasting from said unicorn heritage. So, my name is Momo Hanakai, and I work in the student council alongside my president. So, Jake, please me about where you come from in America. I never got to hear any of the more interesting details about this mysterious transfer student. Momo asked me, as she generally guided me around the school, telling me how the floors were ordered and how to get to certain classrooms. Oh, you know, I am just an average guy from New Mexico, and when I got a scholarship to study abroad, I wanted to get out of my small town and see more of the world. I spoke somewhat evasively, as it was a little weird to just give my life story to someone new. What made you choose Kuo Academy? There are a number of other schools in the area, and with your build I imagine you probably would be interested in sports, right? She asked as she clearly checked out my cut form. The reviews for the school made it out to be the best in the area, and as for sports, honestly, I don't really find joy in playing with balls or hitting a ball with something. Plus, playing sports in this world was worthless with the various supernatural entities in every corner. Hey, so you don't like playing with balls, huh? Momo teased as she lightly bumped against me, making me chuckle along with her as we walked to the student council building. I wasn't going to bother hiding my supernatural presence, as I wanted Riaz to get off her ass and approach me for some form of recruitment, so I can get some of that sweet devil magic and ageless immortality. Alright, well, this is the prez office, just be respectful, and if she asks you to play a game of chess with you, just lose as gracefully as you can, Momo said cheerfully, as she pivoted away from me with her short skirt flapping with the motion, showing off her green panties, making me blink in surprise. Gotta remember, this world is lewd to its core, I muttered as I knocked on the student council's door. Come in, I heard a strict voice speak out. Opening the door, I was met with the sight of two women in the room. One standing beside a large desk with very long black hair, square glasses with amber eyes behind them, a severe face, and lastly, she filled out her Kuo uniform very well with her curvy body. And the star of the show, the very Sona Citri, a pure-blood devil, was sitting behind the desk looking at me from across the room with her glasses glinting with some weird spell or something to look intimidating. Sona, although rather flat in all her body proportions, she was still a beautiful woman with purple eyes and black hair. Your report didn't mention you being a member of the supernatural. Do you know whose territory you have entered without giving prior notice? Sona said crossly, obviously trying to put me on the back foot. I merely brushed my hand through my hair as I shrugged. Didn't think it was necessary, as I came here to go to school. But this is Japan, this is the territory of the Shinto pantheon and more locally the yokai, right? I stated more than asked, and the devils' faces in front of me twitched as they were leasing the land, basically, as saying the devils owned the territory was like saying the devils could own territory in Italy next to the Vatican, or even in Greece next to the Greeks. Be that as it may, I and my fellow king have jurisdiction over the town of Kuo, and more especially this school. Sona's glinting glasses flashed once again, obscuring her eyes, as she spoke again, with her hands folded over her mouth to disguise her facial expressions. What is your goal coming here to Kuo then, other than education? With my flesh crafting powers, to put simply, I could be the best doctor in the world, so I answered as such. I want to get a good education here so I can officially become a doctor later on, as my magic and abilities lie in healing, I said, shrugging, making their eyebrows perk up in interest. The thing was, in DXD, healing items and powers were far and few between, which was why the Phoenix family's Phoenix tears they sold everywhere were so valuable, both economically and politically, as having a heart ripped out and being healed in moments due to drinking a salty tear automatically makes you and your clan extremely valuable. I was taking the panacea route by saying my abilities were healing, but just as they say, don't piss off the white mage, as I can go from healing you from a nasty bruise to give you rectal cancer before you even know it. I even now wasn't helpless, though I doubted I could take on Sona or Riaz's peerages without any real training in my abilities other than the downloaded memories I got from the original unicorn. "I'm a healer, you say? You have proof of your abilities?" she asked with an upraised eyebrow, and I paused in thought. I just want to say that I don't promote self-harm," I said as Sabaki's hand was drifting to one of the letter openers on the table, and she gave me a dirty look. "Yes, Sabaki, he is an unknown. But I will take your words in mind." She then coughed as her glinting glasses enchantment faded away, and then leaned back into her chair, as she looked at me before snorting. "I can feel your magic is barely that of a high-class devil, so I won't give you any troubles, don't worry. Just abide by common decency, and you won't face any problems with me and Riaz Gremory, the other king I share ownership of this territory with." I nodded in understand and then handed over my paperwork at the unspoken acceptance of my place at the school. "Is there anything special I should be aware of in terms of the school's culture?" I asked, wondering there was some kind of unspoken school rules I was unaware of. The two girls both shared a look before they said in unison, "Don't be a pervert." Seeing my blank face saying of course, that's common sense, Sona rubbed the bridge of her nose as she went on to explain with how they just recently changed from an all-girls school. A number of the boys that leapt to join the school have become degenerates, and none worse than the famous perverted trio that regularly breaks into school property to bore holes in the walls of locker rooms and other stuff in order to peep and harass the girls of the school. And why hasn't such filth been expelled and put into juvenile detention? I frowned as I had inwardly hoped that such a trope wouldn't actually exist here in this real world in America, at least if a trio of students got caught with irrefutably proof that they were putting cameras or something up in a locker room. They were fucked, plain and simple. Their lives ruined for being a sex offender. Sona's face twisted briefly before she shrugged. For various reasons, they are being allowed to slide under the radar. For academic success and sports for one. And for the other, well, he has extenuating circumstances. Sona replied, giving little to no information, but then threw in another little tidbit that made me facepalm. "Oh, And if you see them pulling some of their shenanigans, be Kuo Academy's guest, and beat them with some wooden swords or something. It's become a bit of a pastime, and serves as great training for my peerage members to run behind the crowd of females, chasing them down to deliver karmic justice. Right? I will bear that in mind. I muttered as I considered whether Issei suffering brain aneurysms from all the head trauma could be explained away, before a great thought struck me, though obviously, it could bring me some trouble. Rather than kill Issei, I could always just gender bend him. Then the devils can use their literally citywide mind control spells to make everyone forget the gender change. Now that's entirely too much work. Okay, so I suppose I will be getting to gym class, huh? I said as I looked to the schedule that Sona handed me. I lost track of time. Sabaki send Rhea to make sure the trio's scheduled beating doesn't get out of hand. Sona ordered, and I realized what gym time meant. Girls were going to be changing, so obviously Issei and the rest of the idiots would use their free period to do peeking. After I got changed in some basketball shorts and an exorcist shirt, I left the boys' locker room, and when I entered the back of the school with its track and field, I could already hear the damned perverted giggling coming from my side. I have an honest question, I asked loudly, making the perverted trio freeze in place as they whirled away from the fucking window that led into the girls' changing room to look at me. You do realize, not a single girl in this school will look at you as dating material, let alone consider you for anything more. See those tits there? That is the only real tits you will see in real life, as with how fucking pathetic you three are. I said as the jock of the perverted trio yelled in anger at my insults and went for a haymaker at me, and admittedly, for a pure human, he had decent speed and strength, which explained his status as the school's ace in sport events. But I had the blood of a mythological creature flowing through my veins, so his fist was swatted aside, and as the other two attempted to literally take me out with flying tackles to my knee, my subtle smile was hidden when I used the jock as a wall to block the nerd with glasses that could read a woman's 3 sizes at a glance, and the very protagonist of the world, Issei Hyudu. Just stay down, you idiots, I said, stepping back from the tangled up mess of limbs as I registered a sense of bloodlust hanging all over me. Seemingly the whole school's kendo team was arrayed behind me, armed with wooden swords at the ready, and not the bamboo ones with a soft cap either. Nope, it was the katana-shaped wooden swords that could easily break bones. Ladies, I will allow you to take out your pound of flesh then, I said, quickly moving aside as the grim-faced ladies begun the apparently daily ritual of arm exercises, when they used the already downed forms of the Issei and the rest as targets to smash their swords into with precise mechanical swings. With the ladies brutally beating on Issei, I walked away fully content with part of my plans already coming to fruition. I had laid a special hormone on Issei so I could track him down later after school. Chapter 3. The rest of the day was the eternal boredom of a normal school. Besides the panty flashes, the short skirts couldn't seem to hide from occurring every damned 5 minutes. Literally, if I had to watch that MILF math teacher spin around back and forth to point at students and to the problems on the board, making her skirt fly up with each damn spin, I was going to go insane. A man shouldn't be getting a fucking boner in math class. God, how far I have fallen. Finally, the last class ended. I used my all-powerful biomanipulation powers to do something every teenager in public school wishes they could do. I used it to make a boner go away, so I didn't have to do the whole tuck in the waistband trick, and hope to God some girls didn't notice me hobbling as I walked to and from classes. As the final class ended, I just relaxed as some of my classmates talked to me, as I was obviously the hottest new thing to hit the school life that wasn't Kiba getting drawn in some yaoi situation by the creepier schoolgirls. But most of the girls that were in my class weren't bad, and out of the almost 30 students in the class, only 4 of my classmates were actually boys, though thankfully, I didn't have any of the perverted trio in any of my classes other than apparently gym class. Alright, girls, I need to get home and unpack the rest of my stuff from my move here, I said as an excuse, and all the girls graciously allowed their new source of gossip to escape their clutches with promises that once I got a new phone that would work here in Japan, I would exchange emails with them, as apparently they preferred to use emails rather than texts to save money. Okay, Jake, see ya tomorrow, one of the more energetic girls said cheerfully, as she led her little friend group in another direction, as we all exited the school gate, and with my little hanger-ons gone, my sociable smile slipped away on as I rubbed my face. Damn, I forgot how difficult it can be to be so social. After leaving high school behind, I muttered as I walked towards my apartment. Once I was sure I wasn't being followed by either of the peerages, I decided to take the initiative in my plans. I backtracked, and with my olfactory senses heavily enhanced and otherwise modified, I was able to single out the scent of the hormone I placed on Issei and follow it wherever he was going. Thankfully, it was directly home, as shown by the scent ending at a somewhat vaguely familiar home I recalled seeing in the anime. It was a fairly standard upper-middle-class, 2-story Japanese home, and I knew intuitively that he would be upstairs, and if I was lucky, he wouldn't already have his dick in hand and masturbating to the sights he peeped on earlier. But this was Issei Hyudu, so I wouldn't bet on it. After looking around, seeing the neighbors' windows were very clearly fully covered with a blackout drape, probably so Issei couldn't peep, I began to crawl up the walls of the outside of the house, after seeing no one was around when I pinpointed the sound of some kind of game or show coming from a certain window. I guessed that Issei's parents probably weren't home, and either way, it didn't matter, as once I reached the window of the room, I pinpointed, I biomorphed my finger to act as gas dispenser, and grimaced at how even with my supernatural constitution the highly condensed melatonin gas I gently sprayed into the corner of the window made even me feel exhausted. Cat Ace and the others must have made me even more tired than usual. I heard Issei mumble through the closed window thanks to my enhanced hearing, as he was muttering about how he and his friends had already cooked up a revenge plot consisting of stealing my clothes during gym class and hiding them somewhere in the girls' locker room and having me go into there to steal them. I just ignored his bullshit as I waited, still pouring out the natural sleeping chemicals. A couple minutes later, when I was fairly sure my chemical concoction had put the ass muncher into a deep sleep, I, not knowing how to open his window from the other side, just broke its hatches through a slow increase in pressure till the obviously old plastic locks snapped, and although I heard Issei snort in his sleep at the sound of the window opening, I wasn't worried, as by my estimations that amount of the gas I put out was enough to keep a healthy bull asleep unless someone stabbed it or something. Issei Hyudu, now what do I do with you? I muttered as I dragged his desk seat over to his bed and looked at his sleeping form as I considered my options. The first step I did was lightly poke him, and thankfully, with my much more enhanced body, his body was mapped out fairly easily, other than his body being far more resilient due in part to his sacred gear, and I imagine the regular beatings. He was a bog-standard teenage, but for one very obvious difference. He had a sort of extra organ. No, not a literal organ, but something immaterial, constantly affecting his body, and was attached to something I could not yet see, and I instantly knew what it was. His sacred gear, the boosted gear, a Longinus that gave a bog-standard human the potential to slay gods, and it was in the hands of someone with literally the worst talent in the history of all the wielders, but his complete obsession with breasts was able to reach across universes, which allowed a breast goddess to bless him and make him actually a viable entity in the world. But as I coaxed his flesh, a glowing baseball of flesh consisting of his sacred gear, his muscles, and even a layer of skin covered the ball biomatter I took from Issei's body. Now recalling how Drake was practically asleep until his hosts woke him up, I decided that merging some of Issei's flesh into my own temporarily, so it would be as though Issei died before he could awaken Drake, so the red dragon of domination didn't believe I merely stole his host. Once the ball of biomass was fully extracted from Issei, I merged into myself and smiled as I finally felt the boosted gear begin to automatically attach itself to my soul, but I kept my powerful mana from reaching the inactive sacred gear so I wouldn't awaken Drake over the sleeping form of some dude. Now, the real question is what I do with you, I said as I leaned over Issei and pondered my options before I came to a firm realization. I wasn't a sociopath. I honestly didn't have it in me to kill Issei Hyudu in cold blood as he slept before me, despite how annoying he was. Honestly, just taking his sacred gear was enough, as it was still early in the year, and Koneko hadn't taken a bit whiff of him, and found out he had a dragon-like smell on him. Coming to the decision that I wasn't going to kill or otherwise harm the idiot, I wondered if I should gender bend him for the laughs, but then I realized that would point to me in time once knowledge of my abilities inevitably got out. So, without a thought I poked him again, shrunk his dick size by an inch, and not wanting to stay another minute in the dried semen-smelling room, I hopped out of the window and returned home. Chapter 4. The rest of the day, after I did my dirty deed, was me merely half-assing my homework. Honestly, I was considering testing my full mental manipulation abilities on those damned teachers, by trying to twist their brains into thinking I didn't need to do homework or something. But unfortunately, I knew from my own powers that although I could easily direct hormones and other chemicals to affect emotions, but pure thought was outside the realm of possibility when it came to my biomanipulation powers. Riaz needs to hurry up and get off her ass, I muttered as I knew by this morning that Sona had likely already told her counterpart that another supernatural entity was living within their territory. And I was right, as I noticed that when I left my house, I was being followed seemingly by a small white cat and a very obvious black bat. Honestly, a bat flying around in the middle of the day was entirely too obvious, so I was able to register it as Riaz's familiar, but for Koneko's familiar, the cat could have just been any old stray, and I wouldn't have noticed. Unfortunately, Riaz made no such moves. Neither herself nor her peerage seemed to be interested in approaching me at all, though on the other hand the white-haired bishop of Sona's peerage, Momo Hanakai, the woman who initially showed me around the school, spent lunch with me on the roof of the school. So, what kind of supernatural are you? You have a pure, almost holy feeling, but I don't feel the sickness we devils feel when we approach a holy site when I am around you, she asked after we shared some small talk. I grunted as I finished chewing my food before taking a drink. What the hell? I have a sort of holy bloodline, though I don't want to get too specific. But by holy I don't mean the kind of holy that is smite thou who revels in the shadows, I said as I held up my hand and a gentle golden ball of light formed in my palm, bathing the devil beside me in holy light. But if an angel did the same, the low-class devil would have been in extreme pain or worse, but my holy light didn't harm her at all. If anything, it gently soothed her, like laying down on a blanket placed atop thick grass, with the sun bearing down on you from above, and a nice cool wind to keep you cool while you sunbathed. That's so cool, Momo said as she leaned against me with her breasts pushing into my arm, as she stared transfixed into the gently pulsating glow of my unicorn heritage's holy light. Yep, just like sacred gears, my holy light doesn't really distinguish between who it touches unless I direct its intent into a certain direction, I explained as allowed the wisp of light to fade from my hand, with Momo pouting as she pulled back from me. So, is this your lunch break as well? I asked, but seeing Momo's face twitch I added on. Or you trying to avoid Sona? Momo could only laugh nervously and look around fearfully as though me mentioning her name would draw upon the bespectacled devil's ire and attention. He. I won't say you are on the roof without permission if you won't tell Sona I was skipping paperwork all right. She offered and I shrugged in response. I don't know, it seems I have far less to worry about than you. How about you share a piece of that stuffed bun, or whatever that is, in exchange for my silence? I said, and the devil smiled as she tore off a chunk of her food and offered it to me. I could only inwardly smile as I made contact with Momo's hand when she dropped the food into my own palm, and for a brief moment, I received the female devil's full body map within my mind. I saw how their magic was permeating their entire bodies, which gave them their longevity and minor shape-shifting abilities alongside the wings that were attached to their lower backs. But I didn't morph my own body to take on those ever so minor advantages that my unicorn heritage didn't have, as I wanted to maintain my holy energies for now, so that I would have less work to allow Rias or another devil to fully reincarnate me. So I got a pretty good sense for Sona, but can you tell me about Rias Gremory, the other king or ruler of this territory? I rather not step on any toes, I said with a light tone that clearly asked whether I needed to be made aware if Rias ate babies in her spare time or something. Rias, huh? Momo mused as she took another bite of her bun before continuing. Well, her peerage uses the whole occult research club excuse, which allows her to not have too many responsibilities in the school. She offered, which told me all of nothing of Rias in particular. So, Rias is lazy? I asked, which was basically all the info she gave me. But surprisingly, instead of defending her king's counterpart, Momo firmly nodded. Yep, Rias is definitely a devil of sloth. She spends the vast majority of her time just holed up in her old school building watching anime, while Kiba and Koneko actually do schoolwork here. Momo said grumpily, and I realized she probably wished she had such an easy school life. But before I could remark on her opinion of Rias, I couldn't help but shiver as a teasing voice seemingly caressed the back of our necks. Ara. Is that what you think, Rias, Momo? I wonder what your king will think of you trying to poison these cuties' thoughts of my own dear king. Both me and Momo slowly looked behind us, seeing the voluptuous form of Akino Himejima standing behind us on the edge of the roof with merely a chain link fence separating us. I hope there's no class outside right now, or you will be flashing them all, I said as I wadded up the wrapper for my food, and Akino's eyes snapped from Momo to me and her smile was entirely mischievous. Ara. The new kid is worried for my chastity, how adorable. She cooed before she shrugs. But if I cared about a little bit of flashing, I wouldn't even wear this uniform, as that's all it seemingly does. Then the queen piece of Rias's peerage flew over the fence properly, giving me a great look at her black panties, before she landed on our side of the fence, and retracted her bat-like devil wings. So, my name is Akino Himejima. Akino said, lightly bowing to me in the standard Japanese method of greeting, and although I didn't do the whole bowing bit, I nodded and told her name in kind, and then Akino got into the nitty-gritty, as she scowled at Momo. Rias and Sona made a deal, due to Jake being of supernatural descendant, that he was to approach them on his own right, Momo. Akino said with a scary smile, and Momo shivered beside me in fear, as tiny sparks jolted off the hand Akino used to hold up her chin. But her words confused the hell out of me, honestly. Why can't people approach me? I mean, how would I even know to approach them in particular, if I wasn't aware of this game? And I kind of like Momo as a friend at this point already. Honestly, I could tell this world definitely ran on some anime logic when Momo blushed at my words. We are already friends. Yes, I finally have a guy friend. Momo cheered, with Akino almost face-palming at how Momo seemed so ecstatic, and then I was reminded how Soji hadn't been recruited to Sona's peerage yet, as it was so early in the school year. Then I wondered if I should go yoink out his sacred gear as well. But Aquino rained down on the white-haired girl's party as she coughed. Yes. Anyway, I will be informing Rias to speak with your queen that you think so little of her. Aquino said with her sadism coming to the fore, as she clearly was imagining Sona's usual punishments for her peerage, which consisted of magical enhanced spankings, that would leave the afflicted unable to stand let alone sit down on the tan cheeks. Momo however didn't seem worried at all as she shrugged. Actually Prez said that I could approach due to our prior meeting under the umbrella of making sure Jake was doing all right, and Sona has always been saying Rias needs to be more proactive, so maybe this will be a wake-up call when Sona pulls Jake in. Now if I didn't know the nuisances about Rias's need for peerage members, I would likely be confused as all hell, but I wasn't. So instead I just watched the shorter white-haired girl square up with the archetype busty big sister Aquino, who could only frown at Momo's all-too-true words. Then Aquino had an evil smile come across her face, and she surprisingly nodded to Momo's words. Yes, little Momo, you are all too right. I suppose Rias does need a little helpful wake-up call. Then Aquino looked back over to me with her scary smile. Jake, I will be hosting a nice little get-together, with me and my King Rias Gremory, where we will share snacks and talk. I would like you to come and meet Rias, as she would enjoy meeting you. Aquino spoke with Momo's already pale face turning white, as she realized her words may have gotten her into deep trouble. All right. What time? I asked, brushing my hand through my hair at the unexpected invitation. Aquino leaned down with her breasts hanging low due to their weight, and I could smell her hair product and strawberry breath, as her purple eyes met my own blue ones not even half a foot away from me as Aquino softly spoke. How about now? It's not like you are busy, and on Rias's side of the school we don't really care about attendance. She offered as she held out a delicate hand for me to take as though an offer to join the dark side. No class. Sold. I said, taking Aquino's hand within my own, and even as I mapped out her body mentally and found her fallen angel heritage, I all but drowned her mentally in endorphins, and made her hands feel hot at our touch, and the chemical cocktail made her blush heavily at the contact. All right Aquino, take me away, before the evil student council president forces me to stay and do homework, I said frantically as of all fucking people Tsubaki Shinra came out of the staircase, with her arms folded over her large chest, while she glared at Aquino. Aquino Himajima. He hasn't been given the passes you have for skipping class, don't you dare take him away. The Queen of Sona's peerage roared, having obviously been listening in on our conversations somehow. But Aquino's only response was an evil giggle, as a large red circle filled with weird magical squiggles formed beneath us. With a flash of light, we were teleported away.